Hi guys, welcome to an episode of Amplified Voices. And today I am your host. My name is Taco and I am with my guests.
Hi everyone, my name is Kuzasha Shibaya, but you can all call me Casey.
And I'm also with
Rodolinda Mutsingwa.
And today we are going to be talking about something that has caused a lot of waves in Zim recently, and that is the newly updated age of consent. So previously the age of consent had been 16 years old, but the Constitutional Court changed it to 18, and there have been many mixed reactions about it. Personally, my reaction was one of a lot of joy, because it means that, right now there's a big predatory culture in Zimbabwe, and predators won't have as much opportunity to go after young girls anymore, because it is a crime now. You can get prosecuted for that. You can go to jail. Women between the ages of 16 and 18 previously were actually having trouble reporting rape and statutory rape because they weren't getting believed, because if you're over the age of consent, then an older person could claim that you consented to having sexual relations. But if you're under the age of 18, then you can't claim that anymore. But that's just my reaction. What have you guys' reactions been?
Okay, I personally had a problem with how the age of consent didn't align with the definition of a child in the Constitution. I mean, that just opens up a bigger hole for more crimes to happen, and people have excuses for those crimes because the Constitution would be flawed in that case. So I was happy, just like you. Yes, I did a triple flip. Thank you very much.
I think it's quite interesting how the age of consent, the new updated age of consent, is in line with the age of marriage in Zimbabwe and with the definition of what a child is. I think that now it makes our constitution more sound, and it shows that our government is really taking a step towards capping child marriages, because that's been a problem of late. And we think that if the age of consent is now 18, if the age of drinking alcohol is 18, if the age of you being able to get married is now 18, then that means that our house is in order. I don't know what you think, Taco, about that.
I really do agree, because previously they had set the minimum age of marriage without exemption at 18, but the age of consent was still 16. And so you had this problem where, I think it's a societal thing as well, where older people they typically like to go after girls that are just above the age of consent. One, because it helps them evade the law, and two, because there is the culture of wanting, they call it ripe women that are fresh, women that haven't been touched before, and they like to go after people of that specific age. Whereas now, if the age of consent is 18 and someone is caught doing something with someone who is below that age, then it means that without questions, you have committed a crime, you are going to jail. So that's definitely going to stop some people from pursuing those activities. So I think that is a benefit of the age of consent. Are there any other benefits that you guys
It's
think?
also in line with our culture in Zimbabwe, because typically when a girl gets pregnant out of wedlock, the first thing that the family wants to do is to hide that so that they look good in society. And how do they hide that? They get her married. Previously the age of consent was 16 and the age of marriage was 18. So if I had gotten pregnant at 16, I would have still gotten married. And under the Constitution of Zimbabwe, I was a child. So I'm a child, I'm married, I'm pregnant. We don't know how that was working, but we're so happy about this new age of consent. We think as far as child marriages are concerned, the government has been very thorough, and this is a good stance, which we're really happy about.
I think it closed out that gap whereby a guy would tell you that, you know what, I really want to marry you, but then you're not yet 18. But then you can actually consent to sex, so why don't we just do that? Because I'll marry you after you turn 18. So it only makes sense that that gap has been closed out, and now we're seeing the way forward, and everything is aligned to everything else in the Constitution.
The difficulty now lies in aligning what's on paper and
with
what's
the
on the
reality.
ground. What is going to happen to our blessers, for those of us who are below the age of 18? What is going to happen to all these people who are in positions of power, to all these people who come from better financial backgrounds who still like very much high school girls because they want people who are vulnerable, people who are easily manipulated, and people whom they don't have to spend much on. Minor things like pizza and juice and taking you out are a big deal for girls who are in high school, and these predators go after them and they want them. We know and we recognize what the law is saying, but we're really concerned about what is going to happen on the ground. Do you think that these people will get arrested?
I honestly don't think, not that I don't think so, but I think that it's a societal thing before it becomes a legal thing, if that makes sense. Most people are not going to report being in sexual relations with older people. Grooming is still a thing that exists. An older man is still going to go to someone younger than him and he's still going to say, no, but I'm in love with you, but it's different, you can't report this because this and that. And still with the rape culture that exists in Zimbabwe, young women are still not going to be encouraged to go and report.
I feel like it's because they're unaware of their rights and the power they have, and the fact that they don't have people who will implement these things. Because kids are scared. If I'm going to go and report to my grandmother that I've been raped, she's probably not going to understand because in her culture this was all fine, but then now it's wrong. So I feel like it's all about the implementation of those laws and educating people about what we have, our rights and whatnot.
Because the first reaction that a lot of people will have when you say that you have been raped, especially if you don't immediately report it, the first question is, why were you there? What were you doing? Why did you even get yourself in that type of situation? You shouldn't have been out. You shouldn't have worn that. You shouldn't have done this. So people are still not going to be that encouraged to go and report statutory rape still.
I think even if we look beyond statutory rape, if we look at rape of people who are above the age of consent, I think this new age of consent makes them more vulnerable because already there's an underlying bias when a 21-year-old, when an 18-year-old was reporting that they'd been raped. It's like, how old are you? Oh, but you're like above the age of consent. Are you sure it was rape?
Yes.
I mean, did you not enjoy it even a bit? All these kind of uncomfortable, uncultured, unsolicited and unwarranted questions will exist even more because now, well, according to the law, you're an adult. You're above the age of consent. You can get married. I think it makes it more difficult for people to report that they've been raped simply because they're now above the age of consent, even though they are vulnerable and even though rape is still rape regardless of how old you are and regardless of your sexual experience and all these other things. And while we're still there talking about rape and the age of consent, there's the issue of access to sexual reproductive health services.
Yeah, because it's going to affect women that are below the age of 18. In as much as this law is a good thing, and it is a good thing, don't get me wrong, it can also be weaponized because when women younger than the previous age of consent, which was 16, would try to go to healthcare providers, go to the pharmacy and say that, please may I have contraception, please may I have this, they would be chased away or they would face hostility. And the fact that there's going to be a larger demographic of younger women that are going to be affected by that, I think that is something that we have to address. That we are happy, of course, that the age of consent is now 18, but we still have to advocate for people to still have access to reproductive health services even when they're under.
I really feel like it's a conversation which has been going on for a very long time. So the fact that they have increased the age of consent to sexual consent, right? It means that they have to decrease the age of consent to access sexual reproductive health and rights. Because if we look at the statistics, people between the age of 10 and 34, if I'm not mistaken, are the ones who are mostly affected by things such as HIV. And so you are raped by a person and you cannot access these ARVs and whatnot. It's another problem. So the fact that they have aligned the age of consent, they should also align the age of access to these services as well.
While what you guys are saying is really noble and profound, we also have to look at how increasing the age of consent is going to increase the rate of abstinence, or at least that is the assumption here, that well, since the age of consent has been raised and we don't want to be law-breaking citizens, we're not going to be doing the hanky-panky if we're below the age of 18, which means that we're lowering the spread of HIV and STIs and all these other things. What do you have to say about that?
I feel like we should be able to lower the spread of HIV, STIs, and increase education about sexual health in general through other means rather than not rather than making people not want to have sex.
But abstinence is the key. It's
I
the
think
best one.
In Zimbabwe specifically, in our country, not many people follow the law. I think our country is quite a lawless country.
But then,
calling us
but
vagabonds?
then,
I'm
but
not
then
saying people
you
are vagabonds.
guys, ignorance of the law can still not be used as an excuse when you go to the court.
That is true.
So
But
people
we
still
live in a
have to be
country where
educated.
majority of the drivers on the roads now, they don't have licenses. When they get caught by the police, what do they say? Dada, here's $20, and they go. People are still going to do the same thing. So I think that if we want people to abstain, it has to be more of a, I don't know what the word would be. It should be three-dimensional. It should be multi-dimensional in the sense that we are saying, okay, fine, the age of consent is now 18. What are we also going to do? We are also going to increase your access to sexual reproductive health services.
So we
What are
do acknowledge that raising the age of consent is in a way promoting abstinence. Well, at least on paper.
It is
And
going
that's
to
an important
mitigate.
thing because
I
the
think
government
maybe,
plays a
yeah.
parental role. The first thing that a parent does is to set the rules. Whether or not Trudeau follows those rules is another thing. Whether or not I'm going to decide
No, I
to
agree.
sneak out or come back home after the curfew has been passed, it's a totally different issue. It's important for any government to pass laws, at least for it to be
That's true.
recognized as performing its role. And we think that, well, personally, on the part of the government performing its parental role, it has done absolutely amazing and a stellar job in protecting young girls from places, in protecting young girls from child marriages, and in encouraging. Yes, and in encouraging abstinence, yes, exploitation, because most girls were actually now being encouraged to fall pregnant, especially with the onset of COVID-19,
And poverty.
to make ends meet. If my father got retrenched and we no longer have bread on the table, well, then someone has to get pregnant and get married. But if my father now knows that he's going to get arrested for getting me married because, well, I'm below the age of consent, I'm below the age of consenting to a marriage even, I think that that's a stride that we have to acknowledge in terms of positivity.
I also feel like it also aligns to the child labor laws. So, like previously, I can't even say that it's labor, you guys, where you exploit a child, tell them to go and be a sex worker, right? And then they get paid for you. That's what used to happen before it was 18.
Pimping.
Yes. So,
It still
I
does
really feel like now that it's 18, a person will have to know that you're committing a crime. Even if I'm no longer 16, so you're committing a crime. I'm not between 16 and 18. I'm just.
I think we'll have to see with statistics, because I personally think that with just this law alone,
Yes.
the numbers are not going to go down that much. The people that are going to decide not to have
going
sex
to
with people because it's
mitigate.
a crime. And we also have to acknowledge the fact that the law is there. It says that you cannot have sexual relations with someone who is not of this age. But a crime only becomes a crime when it's been reported, and how many people are going to report this. Poverty is still a very big factor in Zimbabwe. So many families in rural or impoverished areas are still going to encourage their daughters to get married. Even when the age of consent was 16, it was still happening. We still had, like, the case of the young girl who passed away, unfortunately, when she was 15, if I'm correct. Her parents were taken to the police, but they never got arrested. Nothing turned out to be anything from that case because they managed to bribe, or it was not taken seriously. So I think it needs to be accompanied by multidimensional change. It needs to be accompanied with a change in people's attitudes towards things like that in society. It needs to also be accompanied with more education when it comes to sex, because I think people are more empowered and are less likely to commit something or do something when they fully know that the responsibility of having sex is STIs, pregnancy. If you're a woman, yeast infections, your lady down there is very sensitive. Your vagina is very sensitive as a young lady. If you are doing this with this many people, these are going to be the consequences.
But it's important for us to acknowledge the positives that come out of certain situations. For example, we were talking about Anna, the 15-year-old who passed away, was it last year?
Yeah, I think it was
Already the fact that we're talking about something that happened, I don't know how many kilometers from Bulawayo, is a positive stride, because previously we were not having conversations about this. We were not even talking about this. And if we start talking about this enough, eventually change is going to be seen.
true.
It's the same thing that happened when HIV was a new thing in Zimbabwe in the 80s. At first, no one wanted to talk about it, and they thought by not talking about it, then it didn't exist. It's the same thing that happened with COVID. Well, we are black, we're in Africa, we're not going to be affected. But with time and with enough enforcement of the message over and over and over again, it then sunk into people that, hey, COVID-19 is a thing, you know, like you can get sick, you can die. It's the same thing that should happen, that will happen with this law eventually. It's going to take time. It really is going to take time, because behavior change is not something that happens overnight. And it's going to need a lot of implementation. Perhaps this is also us kind of low-key pushing a burden onto the law enforcers for them to do their job when it comes to these victim-friendly units and police stations. Can they please do their job? If they do their job, coupled with this law and with SRH education, like you said, then we're going to see the positives. But for now, we're going to talk, and we're going to talk.
Yeah, and we have to keep talking. We have to keep it as a conversation that's in people's heads all the time. Because without people changing their mindsets, we're not really going to go anywhere.
And I really feel like people have been having a problem with this age of consent being changed. So the question has been, why is it that the age of consent has been increased? And is this a way which is a disadvantage to the boys? But then what they don't know is that it's also for the boys.
Yes, it's not just for girls.
Thank you.
It's 18 regardless.
And if two minors are found having sexual intercourse, then
you
both
go
of
to jail.
them are breaking the law.
So there's no exemption laws. In case you didn't know this, there's no exemption laws in Zimbabwe for minors having sex with each other. So don't do it, because if you get caught, you will be arrested.
Okay.
And that goes on your like criminal record forever. So
It also goes on your social record.
Yeah.
I got arrested when I was 17. What did you get arrested for?
You guys, we need a Romeo and Juliet act. So, like,
That, I think that is also a thing that has to be pushed for to a certain degree, because in some countries where the age of consent is 18, they have exemption laws where two minors, and it's usually a 2-year difference, two minors that have a 2-year difference won't get prosecuted for that. You don't go to jail for that, because I mean, who would
We
want
need
that on
the
their
act.
personal record that you
we
got
need the act.
You got arrested,
arrested
for having
because
sex.
and most of the time with minors where we live in our societies, you're doing it in public areas. You're not doing it in a private space. You're not in your home. So most of the time, if you're going to get caught, you're going to get caught doing things in places you should not be doing them. So don't do that.
So this is a way of advocating for children's rights on the part of the law in Zimbabwe, on the part of legislation, because there's been a lot of conversations, and I'm sure we've seen it ourselves, about how children's rights are not really a priority in Zimbabwe because of poverty. Because of poverty, a lot of things are not an infringement of anyone's rights, because we don't have the money to do this. We don't have the resources to finance or cushion your rights, and most of them have been seen as a luxury. And when it comes to age of consent, sexual issues are also seen as a luxury. You going out of your way to prosecute and all of that, trying to prove that this was actually rape when the age of consent was 16, but you're still a child. So there was a lot of confusion and a lot of noise. And with the cost of legal fees, it really wasn't encouraging anyone to move forward. But I think right now it's even better for the individual, because I think that personally someone who is above 18, or at least 18-year-olds, can make more mature decisions. I mean, the assumption is that when you're 18, you have at least set for your first O-level exams. Whether or not you passed is another issue, but you've at least set for your O-level exams, and that is one of the things that help you to mature as an individual. Well, the assumption is that during your O-level break, you did this and that, you did that and that, and you've matured. And by the time you go for A-level, because people are 18, you lower 6s and your upper 6s. So it means that automatically for people in high school and below, you really shouldn't be having sexual intercourse up until at least you do turn 18. And I think it's also going to lower sexual debuts. Raising the age of consent, the new age of consent, is going to lower sexual debuts, because then you're going to start questioning a lot of things. Do I really want to have sex? why am I having sex in the first place?
Is it something that
Yeah.
Something
is it a
that I
choice
want?
that I made by myself, or did I feel
It's against the
pressured
law.
to do this?
Because
Yeah.
it's around that age when you're discovering yourself, you know, as young people, you're realizing that I actually don't like blue, I like pink, I actually don't like this, and I like that. And it's going to also lower incidences of people having their first sexual encounters being coerced by their partners, and by people, I'm referring to boys
Yes.
coercing girls into having sex as a sign of proving that they love them. I think that someone who's at least 18-year-old is in a better position to say, I'm actually not feeling it, my hormones are not even backing this up, this isn't even a safe thing, where's the condom? Safe sex
Yes.
practices are going to be more in effect because of the age of consent. And I think overall, from what we've been discussing, we can agree that
Yeah.
to a greater extent.
So yeah, to a greater extent, the age of consent has definitely done a good thing. It's protecting younger women, and now moving forward, it needs to be coupled with sexual reproductive health rights, education, making sure that women under 18 still can access healthcare services that are to do with sexual reproductive health. And I think moving forward, that this law has done a good thing for us. And yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
And keep up with the conversation
Thank
on our
you.
social media platforms. Don't forget to subscribe,
Subscribe.
and follow us,
And
and
follow
tell a
us,
friend
yes.
to tell a friend, and spread the message.
Share the link. Thank
Oh
you.
no, so